and welcome back to another episode of the Chicken Box, powered by the Afro American, the oldest continually running family owned newspaper in the country. We're the oldest Black owned business in the DMV, and so we're excited to be here with you all today. We have a really special guest that's going to talk to us about the origins of racial injustice, a very important topic as we head into Black History Month. And so I know that I am personally excited to welcome Terence Lee to the show. So, Terence is an Australian lawyer, engineer, and author who believes in telling the narrative as it is and was, although his novel, Palpable Bull's Doctrine of Discovery, Royalty, and Results, describes certain persons from the 1600s to the 1900s, stating evidence that's backed up by documentaries, previous career, um, research, and other methods. So we welcome Terence, who has a background in civil engineering, but also has a lot of passionate work that he's been doing in racial justice. So welcome. And our co-host, Dr. Draper, is here. How's your day
Hi.
going?
Hello. It's going well. Hello there. Is it Dr. Lee? We welcome you. Thank you so much for being on. I understand that it's the middle of the night where you are in Sydney, Australia. So we really do appreciate the sacrifice of your joining us here live at noon Eastern time. And we know that people who are watching from all over the world. And so welcome. So, Dr. Lee, um, we want to know about your book and about the work that you do. You are a university professor, Dr. Lee.
Will you say that again, please?
I said you. I understand that you are a university professor. Is that correct?
No, I'm not a professor. I'm a practicing lawyer, and I've been that for many years, and I just do large uh, intellectual property and other cases. I'm not a professor, but I do hold the degree of Master of Laws.
Okay, Master of Laws. That's great. Well, that makes you an expert in your field, and so we're glad to have you. So, Ashley, were you about to ask Mr. Lee a question?
Well, yeah, I think it's really interesting, your book. I just want to take some time to read and the description that pops up on Google Books, which is really, really cool. It talks about how the book examines the consequential slave trade in West Africa, tracing its origins to the Royal African Company established by England's King Charles II in 1672. But that's not the only European that you mentioned who was involved in the slave trade. There's chapters devoted to Leopold II, the King of Belgium, who was noted for his brutal treatment of slaves, the removal of hands, and just all that he did to the people of the Congo, which was formerly known as the Congo Free State. So, can you tell us a little bit about this book, what it was like researching everything and pulling all together these historic texts to really paint a picture for your audience?
I'm sorry. Would you mind repeating again? I just lost you on the screen.
Yes, I just was saying, could you describe your process and your research that it took for you to pull this book together while studying older or historic texts to help your readers understand what was really going on in the early 1400s when the slave trade started?
Yes. Well, I was brought up in an age, where I was told and very, very strange things like uh, we'd been on the earth for 6,000 years, and we were all in original sin because Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, told to them by the talking snake in the tree and all that kind of stuff. And eventually I decided to see, where it all started. And then I knew that priests are always taught philosophy. And I thought, well, what has philosophy got to do with religion? So I just took the time to go back, and I was a bit staggered to learn that really Christianity is based on the ancient Greek philosophers. So I thought I'd just go from there, and that's what I've done in the book. And being a lawyer, uh, I know that I have to have facts, and I would never publish anything that wasn't factually correct if it was not supposed to be fiction. So that's why I've done all the research and just found out what happened. And the more I looked into it, the more surprised I became because a lot of the well-known people were not really that nice at all. And such things as King Charles II of England was the one who initiated the West African slave trade. So that's why I did the book and just looked at all the people that I considered had the principal influence.
So for our thank you. So for our audience, and Ashley, you may have said this already. What's the name of the book? So our audience will know the name of the book.
It's got a long title, unfortunately. It's Papal Bulls, Doctrine of Discovery, Royalty, and Results.
Doctor of
And
Discovery, Royalty, and Results.
results, yes.
Okay,
And
that
and,
go ahead.
and this Doctrine of Discovery, of course, became uh, in the news recently when the Pope Francis talked about the doctrine of discovery, and that was recently, I think about 2005, upheld the uh, by the United States Supreme Court uh, because the original inhabitants were going to buy back real estate in New York, and they said, "Well, if we do that, we want our original sovereignty back." And the Supreme Court and Justice Ginsburg said, "No, uh, we've got that under the doctrine of discovery, and that's how it stays." And because if the Supreme Court didn't, then all of America would go back to the native inhabitants, and so would Australia. So that's why we're all stuck with the doctrine of discovery, because that's why we're where we are.
Right. And I want to just go back to Palpal's Bull's doctrine. Some people in the audience might not exactly know what that is, but it was a piece of text that was introduced by Pope Alexander. And it stated that any land not inhabited by Christians was available to be discovered, claimed, and exploited by Christian rulers, and declared that the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted. And so we know in the slave trade, owners and masters used religion to help gain control over other people. And so I was wondering if you could speak to what you saw while doing your research for this book about how religion weighed in on the slave trade and how some people felt justified in what they were doing.
Well, yeah, so this all started in the book. I refer to Pope Eugene, and Pope Eugene said that anyone that was not a Catholic, which was a Christian in those days, was doomed to go to hell no matter what good work they did. So that really meant to them that to the monarchs that it meant to the monarchs that anyone else, really weren't worthwhile human beings, and that's why this was seized upon by the uh, by the monarchs to go and do all this colonization, and then a further pope divided the world into two with a line from the North Pole to the South Pole between Spain and Portugal. And they said, one side's yours, Spain, and one side's yours, Portugal. And of course, this uh, continued and was taken advantage of by all the monarchs until we came to the Enlightenment, when such people as Voltaire and Rousseau, who are referred to in the book, uh, saw through to the end of this.
Mhm. So
So
if you're
was
just tuning in, oh, go ahead, Ashley.
oh
No,
no,
go on, Ashley.
okay, I was just going to ask if Rousseau was in favor of slavery, or did he speak out against it? I mean, I'm seeing a quote from him that it's says something about everywhere man is in chains. It says, "Man was born free, and he is everywhere in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are indeed greater slaves than they." And so I just wanted to ask what perspective Rousseau had on everything that was going on, and how he was maybe fighting against priests and churches and monarchs, as you mentioned.
Well, of course, Rousseau was against slavery, and and he was perhaps, with all his voluminous writings, the main contributor to the Enlightenment. But he was certainly said that slavery, was against the natural law.
Okay. All right. Well, if you're just tuning in, this is the Chicken Box, powered by the 131-year-old Afro. Go to afro.com to find out more about the Afro. And we have with us attorney Terence Lee, who is with us live from Sydney, Australia, where it is about, I guess it's after midnight where he is. And so we appreciate him coming on. And it may be after midnight where you are watching this. And so if you have a question for him, please put it in the chat. Oh, it is 4 a.m. there. Oh my goodness. So it is early, early in the morning. And so, Mr. Lee, I just returned from Ghana. And of course, in Ghana, the Cape Coast was one of many slave castles in Ghana, or large forts. And I was struck by the fact that the dungeon for the enslaved was there, as well as the monarch's quarters, and the church, all on the same property, which suggests that the church condoned the enslavement of the Ghanaians. What's your theory on that?
Yes, it's of course, in France at the time before the revolution, there was the three estates. The first estate was the monarchy. The second estates were all the nobles, and they had all the money and all the influence. And the third estate, who eventually revolted, were the people who had really only lived in poverty, and the monarchy and the nobles, in conjunction with the prelates in the church, who was in the second estate. Of course, they can control the whole lot, and that was the reason behind the French Revolution, and that's what inspired Voltaire and Rousseau and others to to put it to the people that that this should not apply. And of course, that's what happened, and then that then gave way to Francis Galton and Karl Marx, and all of that, which led to uh, where we are today. And and that even though that the communism really got a bad name, it was really not Marx and Engels who just nominated some peaceful transposition. It was taken over by people like Joseph Stalin and those who brought in violence. So really, it was just a progression, and and then as I explained in the book, that Adolf Hitler, he was influenced by George Bernard Shaw, the Irish playwright, and and uh, and Charles Davenport of America. So Hitler got all of his ideas, which came from England to the United States and back to him. So even though he was an evil person, he was not the one that started all this. He was merely uh, uh, and influenced by these people, and also by Henry Ford, who had a great antipathy towards the Jews, and Hitler was, and it's in the video, was saying that I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration, And perhaps if you could show the video, which is just some still pictures, I can make some quick comments because this really, even though these uh, pictures are only some in the book, they really trace it through as to how the progression went in the book. And each of the uh, stills is 10 seconds long, so I could make a quick comment as the video went through.
Okay. And did I understand that you illustrated some of the book yourself? I see these are different kind of photographs, but did you also do some of the illustrations?
I've done all of the illustrations myself. Uh, well, they're existing illustrations, and one of the main things as a lawyer, of course, I've got to decide is that I can't infringe copyright. So there is no picture there that is not in the public domain. So I got the old pictures, colorized them if necessary, then put all the stuff in. So I've really had to teach myself all this modern technology, but they all came from before 1927, and so basically they're all in the public domain, and that's why I have got no uh, some other certain pictures and things I haven't got in there because that would infringe copyright. So yes, I did put them all together
Mhm.
and made sure that
So,
all in the public domain.
right. Well, that is true if it's in the public domain. Enslavement any place is an awful atrocity, from West Africa to West Indies to North America. Um,
Look, I'm sorry, but there's something wrong with my screen. I can't see the video.
Sorry, it's on lynching in the U.S. South right now in 1882. It's on that picture. Um,
There's something. I hear it coming. I think I've got it now. I'll just have to just get rid of this if I can. I
okay.
hope
for
it
the
just.
audience,
just
it's kind of
sorry,
showing
sorry.
how
No.
it started off with showing how
Uh,
early philosophers were sort of
yeah. Look, I'm
weighing
sorry.
in
I just
and
can't see it on my screen. I'm sorry. And if I
Oh,
hit
that's
the
okay.
the cross out,
That's
I
all right.
might sign myself out.
That's all. We're just showing the illustrations that you're very, very familiar
I can
with.
see the illustration. I've got them now.
Yeah, that,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, that's all it's showing.
so it started
So
off
there,
by
of course. Yeah,
showing
there
early
is
philosophers
Russo, of course. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and their opinions on the
yeah,
slave trade. And now it's sort of moving into the United States, which I thought was pretty cool about your book, where you not only talked about priests and monarchs, but you also talked about past presidents of the United States, specifically Thomas Jefferson, who owned slaves. And so I wondered if you could, speak to President Jefferson, who's also, I believe, featured on Mount Rushmore, which you said you wanted to share more comments about, just about how, slavery has helped build and been the backbone of our nation, and how as these slaves traveled from West Africa to America, the impact that they made on the land agriculturally and our political system, our court system, which, as we saw, Justice Ginsburg was still making rulings on in the 21st century.
yes. Uh, yeah, and even Abraham Lincoln himself uh, regarded the black Americans as second class people, and so yeah, that was quite common, and as shown in that link. Well, Abraham Lincoln really was one way or the other about whether the slave should be freed. He said, I'm okay either way as long as the union is kept together. So there's a lot of things that people haven't been taught about.
Right. So you may have said this. You're right. There are lots of
And the
things.
picture.
Right. You are right. There are lots of things that people have not been taught about. What inspired you to do this book?
Um, I was I was brought up and on a whole lot of stuff that which were basically just lies. You know, we were told things at school and all that, and it was just I thought I'd just go back and see what the true story was, and I think it started when we were always taught that the priests were taught philosophy, and I thought, what has philosophy got to do with religion? And a gentleman, an Australian, recently wrote a book, and he did train to be a priest, and he said, look, when we did philosophy, uh, we weren't allowed to read the philosophers; we were just told what they said, and so and then it came back to do it, but at the beginning, and this is in the book that Christianity was just looked upon as a kind of a Jewish sect, and the philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, they were used to give some credence to the Christian movement, and that's what happened. And so that philosophy, uh, and so philosophy really is just and that is why Galileo and Giordano Bruno were treated so badly by the Roman Inquisition because they disputed the fact that the Earth was the center of the universe.
Right.
Okay.
And
How long did it take you? Yeah, how long did it take you to do the book, Mr. Lee?
Oh,
How?
it took me a couple of years because I'm pretty busy working and I just did it on the spare time and I'd researched it. Then I'd put Grammarly onto it to get to get all to all the phrasing and that right. So it took quite a while and I had some friends of mine have a look at it for me, and so it was really a couple of years.
Okay,
so
yeah, that's a lot of research.
Yes.
All right, go ahead, Ashley.
now I just wanted to ask why you think, even with all this history, that people are still denying that Black people are facing racial injustice here in America and across the globe. Um, so why do you think that is?
Why do I think that this? Uh, well, I think that in the book, of course, uh, uh, when the Civil Rights Act was passed and all that, and you had these so-called Jim Crow laws, which is a belittling name, but certainly it was just inculcated into people, and and I think that's just how it was, and so that's why I made the final chapter in the book on Martin Luther King, who I think was an admirable man, and and he was probably assassinated. Well, he was assassinated, but there's some conspiracy theories which probably right, but he really gave up his life uh, for the African Americans, and he made a lot of difference, and so did his friend Rosa Parks.
Yes, and we know Martin Luther
Yep,
King
that
Day
is.
is coming up this Monday. What were you going to say, Dr. Draper?
No, I was going to say there's a question on the screen um, where hi, Rosella Rose McDonald, and hello to everyone who is watching this segment of Chicken Box. We are on here with attorney Terence Lee talking about his book on in slavery, his historical book that really goes way, way back as he talks about the different phases of enslavement in West Africa. And so glad everybody's on board. But the question is, did you run into controversy when you were researching and writing your book? And if you did, how did you manage that?
Well, the there is a website called Project Gutenberg, which has all old books that are out of copyright, and it's a marvelous site. And you can go into Project Gutenberg and download all these old books and all the old manuscripts. So I use a lot of Project Gutenberg, and that was the main source, and and there's lot, and then all the old pictures and that, all the old photographs, it's just a matter of copying them to your website and enhancing them, and and colorizing them. So all of the old black and whites that I did use in the book, I've colorized them all, and that's just using the modern AI technology.
So for the picture, so I have not seen the book, but for the for your illustrations and your captions, is that's what the main part of your book is. It's mostly just a chronology of enslavement, right? Mainly in West Africa, the origins and that type of thing. So Project Gutenberg was a good source for your
Yes.
illustrations.
Well,
Oh,
Project Gutenberg was my main source of research. Yes.
yes. Okay. So you didn't have opposition to your research because you were using that online resource.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's good. That's what you meant when you said something about learning the technology to get all of those things done.
Yes. And also on Wikimedia, if you're after any illustrations, you can go to Wikimedia, and they will give you a list of any old illustrations which are out of copyright. And so I made a lot of use of Wikimedia as well, and being very careful not to use any image which was still in copyright.
Right. Well, that sounds like a something a real good lawyer would know, right? Which
Uh,
how how to
Yeah,
do
well,
that.
that's right. And the research is, that when you talk to clients, uh, you always have to ask for the documents, because what you're told is quite often is not correct. And when I first became a barrister, I was told by a senior barrister that a document is worth its weight in gold, and I've always remembered that, and that is very, very true.
That is very, very good. We said at the top of this broadcast that we were going to end uh, in about we're going to spend about 30 minutes, and we almost are out of time. So
Yeah.
those who are just tuning in, this is the Chicken Box, yes, with two X's, powered by the Afro American newspapers. Please go to afro.com to learn more about the Afro. We've been having a conversation with Terence Lee from Sydney, or he's in Sydney, Australia, about his book. And so what we do on the Chicken Box every episode is we give space and time for each of us to get on the box so we can talk about what we've been talking about for a few minutes, or you can talk about another subject. And so, Mr. Lee, I'm going to ask you to get on the box first, and then Ashley, and then I'll close us out. So you're on the box, whatever you'd like to talk about.
I'm sorry, was that directed to me?
Yep, directed to you, right to you.
Yeah, I'm in Sydney, Australia, and am, am I going to be asked any questions by the viewers?
Well, you were asked a question. You got a question by the viewer. Well, here's another question. What do you want the readers to take from your book, and why did
I
you take on this project?
what I want the readers to take from the book is that what we are all taught and told is not necessarily correct, and the only way to really make sure is to check the documents. The documents are the most important things, and whatever you're told, it's always embellished and that, and it's not necessarily correct. And this book demonstrates, or I've tried to demonstrate, that some of the well-known people, things that are not really nice about them are just never told you. So that's why, I want the people. I would like the people in the book to know what really transpired, and it just gets back to two or three people, the popes, and then for the West African slave trade, uh, King Charles II, who's now succeeded by King Charles III.
Yeah, we agree with you there that the way some things are taught, certainly it's not an accurate depiction. Thank you. Ashley, you're on the box.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again to Mr. Terrence for joining us today and providing so much context on the slave trade. And just want to circle back to Dr. Draper's comments about Elamina Castle, which is in Ghana, off Cape Coast. And if you ever get the chance to go there, you really should. Not only do you see how people, kings and queens, were living on site with slaves, you also see that slaves were kept below ground. And so it's interesting to see how life up top was clean and tidy. People were going to church, going to classes, and below there were human lives that were being affected. And so if you go, they also tell you that they have to keep the feces that people stood in because there are historians that will try to deny that humans were trafficked through that site. So seeing the door of no return and all of that is just absolutely amazing. And it reminds you that you have to know your own history, know where you come from. I love that your title mentions royalty, Mr. Terrence, because, in Africa, that's exactly what we were, kings and queens of, our own villages and nations with a well-working system of civilization for ourselves. And so any chance that we get, it's important to remind ourselves of that, especially with Dr. King Day coming up and Black History Month. And so that's my time on the box.
Okay, so let me echo Ashley and thank you so much, Mr. Lee, for joining us on the Chicken Box on today. You
It was
remind
a
me,
pleasure,
and
Doc.
you're welcome.
It was a
I'm
pleasure. Thank
reminded.
you for having me.
You are so welcome. I am often reminded that in this debate about what should be taught in public schools, so many um, want to deny the reality of um, slavery and the enslavement of human beings. But it goes back centuries. It goes back centuries. And so, thank you for doing the research that you have done. And we must insist that our true history is taught. And we have to do the research. And as you said, there are things in the public domain. And we have to not be afraid to say this is what really happened. I agree with Ashley. You go to Cape Coast in Ghana, and you hear that history and you see it for yourself. There's no denying of the inhumane treatment of people at the hands of the church, at the hands of the monarchy, and at the hands of some of their fellow citizens as well, as people were interested in the slave trade and the gold dust that you could find not just in Ghana but throughout West Africa. So we thank you so much for joining us. If our other co-host was on, he would say, call a senior today. Don't text them, call them. And he would also remind us, as I've done a couple of times, to go to afro.com. Please follow us on all of our social media, and we hope that you will also take out a subscription. So, Mr. Lee, again, thank you for getting up so early to join us on this episode of the Chicken Box. And so, until next week, we say, don't be a chicken, get on the box. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr.
You are welcome. You are